Factory floor silent, robotic arms hang motionless. Workers suited in orange overalls sit idle on concrete. A Stellantis production line has just stopped dead. No materials, no motion, no magnet motors. The reason? China denied a license, and the machine at the heart of Europe's green transition, the electric vehicle, can't function without it. Across Germany, France, and Italy, executives are panicking. A quiet crisis is turning industrial. And the irony, these are the same countries that just months ago helped block Chinese EVs from entering their markets. Now they're pleading with Beijing for 100,000 tons of the very materials their sanctions tried to sideline. In early April 2025, China updated its export control laws to require licensing for 7 key rare earth elements, including neodymium and dysprosium, critical for electric vehicle drive motors. Beijing didn't name names, but approval speeds were uneven. Countries deemed unfriendly were suddenly at the back of the line. The European Union, after joining the US and launching aggressive tariffs on Chinese EVs, found itself there. By May, Europe's auto sector had a problem no bailout could fix: empty inventories. Volkswagen, Renault, BMW, even Tier 2 suppliers like Volvo and ZF all faced stalled deliveries and looming shutdowns. In Serbia, Stellantis tried to bypass restrictions by leveraging Belgrade's pro-China relations. They got a partial reprieve, but not enough to keep broader European assembly lines alive. Facing economic paralysis, the EU issued a direct ultimatum to China: fast-track the delivery of 100,000 tons of rare earths within 30 days. Without it, the electric vehicle transition, already under strain, would collapse. Beijing's response, subtle but strategic. Friendly countries like Serbia, the statement read, are not affected by the new restrictions. Translation: Brussels would have to wait. The same bloc that labeled China's market behavior distortive was now dependent on it to save its flagship green industry. This isn't the first time China has flexed its rare earth dominance, but it's the first time the EU found itself both the target and the petitioner. In 2024, China exported 1.284 million new energy vehicles. It wasn't just about quantity, it was about quality, price, and scale. BYD, NEO, Xpeng, each with vertically integrated supply chains from raw minerals to battery packs, threatened to rewrite the global EV order. In May 2024, Washington imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The move cut off the world's largest market. Then came the software bans: no Chinese chips, no connectivity modules, no batteries. By July, Europe joined in. Temporary anti-subsidy duties escalated into 100% tariffs over 5 years. The message wall of China before it dominates another sector. Yet by the first quarter of 2025, China had already struck back without firing a shot. BYD's April sales in Europe jumped 169% year over year, passing Tesla for the first time. China's global EV market share reached 67.7%. For every 3 EVs sold, 2 came from Chinese brands. So while Europe closed the front door with tariffs, Chinese automakers found side entrances through Hungary, Serbia, and partnerships with non-EU affiliates. That's when the contradiction became impossible to ignore. Europe was punishing Chinese EVs, but couldn't build its own without Chinese materials. Let's mull this over for a minute, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Europe's plan was simple: limit imports, ramp up domestic mining, diversify supply chains, and weaken Beijing's grip. Instead, it exposed a dependency even deeper than expected. Rare earth magnets used in motors, sensors, and battery systems have no near-term substitutes. Each EV needs around 1 kilogram of these materials. Without them, production halts, and in April, halt it did. By my day, more than 40% of European auto plants reported partial shutdowns due to component shortages. The scramble began. Suppliers submitted hundreds of export license applications to China, but only about 1/4 were approved. Some shipments sat in port for weeks just waiting for customs clearance, while others were rejected without any explanation at all. Bosch warned it would miss delivery schedules. Mercedes pushed back production of its EQS line. Renault furled workers and quietly executives from across the continent began flying to Beijing. The EU called it, quote, a matter of industrial survival. Prices surged. Neodymium, which was once stable at $110 per kilogram, hit $170 by June. Dysprosium topped $400. Cost estimates projected an 8 to 10% increase in EV retail prices if supply stayed constrained. Tesla, with its US-based partnerships and materials diversification, actually gained a price edge. Chinese firms had vertical access. European automakers were boxed in. Ironically, the very tariffs meant to protect European industry were now just accelerating its disadvantage. Had Europe prepared? Not quite. In 2023, the EU pledged $1.7 billion for rare earth investments. Germany and France eyed Australian miner Arafura as a potential alternative. Romania offered exploratory cooperation. But new mining operations take 5 to 10 years to come online and refining even longer. China controls 91% of the world's rare earth refining capacity. Europe controls virtually none. By the time European engineers reach Romania's potential mining sites in 2024, they found the deposit shallow and costly, about 3 times more expensive to extract than China's. Even if raw materials could be mined, refining remains the choke point. China controls 91% of global capacity. Europe controls nearly none. The EU's 2025 Critical Raw Materials Act set a goal to quintuple domestic output by 2030. But nearly 99% of rare earth magnets still come from China. Ambition clashed with immediacy, so Brussels reversed course. In June, the EU ambassador to China quietly requested urgent consultations. The ask prioritized Europe in the licensing queue. In exchange, the EU hinted at potential cooperation in green tech, trade facilitation, and maybe eventually a tariff review. What they received instead was a diplomatic backhand. On July 1st, Beijing announced a 5-year extension of anti-dumping duties on EU-origin stainless steel billets and hot-rolled coils, taxes ranging from 18% to 103%. It wasn't retaliation. The investigations dated back to 2019, when Europe flooded China with below-cost exports. But the timing meticulous. Steel isn't just another commodity. For China, it's the foundation of infrastructure, construction, and defense. Between 2018 and 2021, EU stainless steel exports to China jumped 80%, often undercutting Chinese mills. By 2022, local producers were hemorrhaging. The EU's share of China's stainless steel market climbed from 12% to 23%. Dozens of domestic steel plants shut down or went bankrupt. Now Europe, once the exporter, is the one scrambling for imports. At the same time, the European Parliament condemned China's rare earth restrictions as, unjustified and coercive. A non-binding motion passed with 523 votes, urging the Commission to resist Beijing's pressure. But honestly, the same Parliament now acknowledges that 98% of its rare earth magnets and 99% of the 17 rare earth elements come from China. Philip Andrews Speed of the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies stated bluntly, China's controls are more powerful than any tariff. At the G7 summit in Canada, EU President Ursula von der Leyen accused China of weaponizing critical minerals. Yet no leader proposed a realistic alternative to the Chinese supply chain. A vague G7 Critical Minerals Action Plan was announced, lacking specifics, timelines, or funding. Meanwhile, China opened a green channel for selected European companies, but only after full supply chain transparency was granted to Beijing. This wasn't just leverage, it was intelligence gathering. Back in China, officials referenced a quote from Deng Xiaoping in 1987. The Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. Beijing has spent 3 decades building toward that prophecy, investing in both upstream and downstream rare earth integration, locking in African and Southeast Asian supply contracts, and passing its own export control law that interestingly is modeled after US frameworks. In 2020, it banned the export of rare earth refining equipment. In 2023, it added gallium and German germanium to its restricted list. And by 2025, it added software controls and dual-use license mandates. Every restriction legal and, well, cumulative. So, where does this leave the EU? At the time of this recording, a Chinese delegation is en route to Brussels, with high-level talks planned in both Germany and France. The agenda includes rare earth supply, industrial cooperation, and of course, the upcoming China-EU summit. The EU is hoping for a deal, but China honestly wants something more permanent. Acknowledgement that supply chains can't just be weaponized without consequence. Because while tariffs can be lifted, industrial ecosystems take decades to rebuild. And in the meantime, Europe may face a choice. Open its markets or watch its electric vehicle ambitions dissolve in the absence of a single silent ingredient. A kilogram of magnet, a ton of leverage. The EU sanctioned the car. Now it's bargaining for the motor. The contradiction isn't just political, it's structural. And you know, in a world of zero-emission dreams, it turns out the dirtiest fight is over the cleanest future. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe, and hey, check out another video that is now on your